Welcome back to another video, and today we got our Week 11 College Basketball Power 40 Rankings video, and we're here every single Monday, every single week, giving you guys these videos. I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for the support. Please continue showing support. I'm loving it. I'm loving to see the engagement down in the comments, and make sure you subscribe, like this video, turn on the noties if you are new, all that good stuff. But let's go ahead and jump right in to the Power 40, starting off at the bottom, working our way all the way up to number 1, and we got a bunch of huge results this past week that we got to talk about, as well as a bunch of huge matchups upcoming this next week. So, pretty big week here. We're in the thick of conference play. Conference play did just start pretty recently, so we're going to be getting a whole lot of good games. Starting off with our number 40 team, I'm going to have Kentucky. They're going to move down 9 spots for me. They're coming off a home loss to Missouri. I know Missouri has looked pretty good at certain times this season. Missouri just recently did beat Florida. They also just beat Kentucky. If Missouri were to have lost to Ole Miss, I probably would have had Missouri in this ranking. Now, I kept them out because Missouri did lose to Ole Miss, but they went into Rupp Arena, into Kentucky, won that game 73-68. Kentucky just looks like a train wreck right now. I'm sorry. This is a team that you can't even say I'm hating. Like, I've believed in this team. Literally just like 2 weeks ago, I said Kentucky could potentially maybe still win the SEC. I don't think that's the case anymore. This was a team, I want to say in week 2 or week 3, I had ranked as my 3rd highest team in the country. They're all the way down at 40. It's crazy to me that I'm saying there's a chance next week, if they keep playing like this, they drop all the way out of the Power 40. And they have a road game against Tennessee coming up. They're going to have to win that game. They are 10-6, 1-2 in SEC play. For the amount of money they spent on this team, for the amount of hype coming into this season, it's been pretty disappointing, to say the least. Number 39 is going to be Texas A&M. They're coming off a pretty good win here on the road against Auburn. They went in there, wins 90-88, 2-point win. Now, Auburn was very close to winning that game, but Texas A&M, don't look now. They're 13-3. This is the number 41 ranked team in KenPom. They're top 60 in offense and defense. So a pretty good, pretty even there. And they're out of some pretty good teams. They're out of Baylor, Seton Hall, UCF, USC. A lot of teams that have been ranked at certain points or still ranked in the Power 40. So I feel like Texas A&M is deserving 13-3 as well. Only losses are to UCF, Oklahoma State. Both of those came within the first 2 weeks of the season. And then SMU, who in overtime, by the way, who's been ranked for quite some time. So they also picked up a win over LSU pretty recently, picked up a win over Oklahoma on Saturday. So, yeah, Texas A&M continues to roll. They have a road game, though, against Tennessee coming up. That'll be a huge test, but Buckyball in Texas A&M, it's looking really good right now. Number 38 is going to be Oklahoma State. I put Oklahoma State ahead of Texas A&M because, well, they do have the head-to-head. I know it was in November. That was so long ago at this point, but Oklahoma State also just picked up a pretty good win against UCF, winning by 11 points at home. Now, I will say Oklahoma State maybe could have potentially been higher, but they did lose to Iowa State. But honestly, a road loss by 12 points to Iowa State, who's undefeated, who's been a top 3 team in the country for the past 5 weeks, and they were right there at halftime. They were only down 2 at halftime. Iowa State ended up pulling away, but honestly, that's really not that bad of a result. I'm not going to take too much from that. So Oklahoma State at 13-3. They're going to move up 3 spots here to number 38. That win over UCF, definitely giving them some life, a bit of a boost. But they have been ranked at a certain point in the Power 40 at some point this season. Texas A&M, I will say, is brand new. They have not been ranked at all at any point this season. Miami of Ohio continues to get it done. You could argue they should be higher, sure. To be fair, they really haven't played anyone. Now, I was giving them a lot of love last week. They beat Akron and Bowling Green. Those are 2 pretty good teams in their conference in the MAC, but, I mean, yes, they are 17-0, so it gets to a point where you just got to start pushing them up, but they're barely a top 100 team in KenPom, and they're really not going to have much of any tests, playing in the MAC, throughout this whole season. We'll see what happens in their conference tournament. I'd assume this is a tournament team. I'd assume they win the MAC, but maybe a team like Akron can knock them off in their conference tournament. But, I mean, I said this last week, regular season-wise, they should be favored in every game going forward, and 17-0 right now, so there's a chance they finish the regular season. I'm assuming not undefeated, but they could potentially finish the regular season as like a 1-loss, 2-loss, 3-loss team. Like they're gonna be close to having an insane record. So we'll see what happens. But if they keep winning, they'll continue to move up. But I'm holding off a little bit on Miami of Ohio just because, I mean, the resume is just not going to be there, and it never really is. But undefeated up until this point is a huge accomplishment. I don't want to take anything away from that. But in all honesty, like, if Kentucky played Miami of Ohio, what do you think the spread would be on that? I think Kentucky would be favored by quite a bit. I'm just being honest. I know, some people aren't going to like to hear that, but they are undefeated. I'll give them that. They're deserving of being a top 40 team, and until they lose, I mean, maybe they just never lose, I don't know, but until they lose, they're going to be in here, so good for Miami of Ohio. We're going to have Miami of Florida coming in right ahead of them, one spot ahead of them. This is what I had last week. They're both moving up 3 spots. Miami is 14-2. They've been picking up some pretty good wins in the ACC. They got a pretty big game, though. On Saturday, they go on the road to play Clemson. This is a team ranked inside the top 25 of the AP poll. We'll get to where I have them ranked, but I think they're a very good team, so that's a huge test for Miami. They also have to play at Notre Dame. Now, I know Notre Dame has been without their best player, so it should be a winnable game for them, but that's still a pretty solid team. Notre Dame's picked up some pretty good wins this season, so we'll see what happens there. I'd assume Miami does win that game, but at Clemson on Saturday, that is definitely the big test there for Miami. But 14-2 in the ACC, that's pretty good. I'm going to keep rewarding them if they keep winning. UCF's going to drop down 9. They got quite a boost. I don't think they were ranked at any point up until last week in my Power 40. They got all the way up to 26. They're going to move down to 35, though. The reason they got up so high is because they went out and beat Kansas, but they did lose to Oklahoma State, but they picked up a pretty nice win over Cincinnati. That was a team that was kind of fighting for their lives, tournament hopes. Now at this point, Cincinnati's 8-8. They probably don't have any tournament life. So UCF did take care of business in that one, winning by 1 point. But that road loss to Oklahoma State is definitely hurting them, especially with a lot of these teams around them getting some pretty good wins. They're not like crazy high in KenPom. They're not crazy low either. 45th, not too bad. Number 34 is going to be St. John's. They actually picked up, I will say, I'll give them credit, they picked up 2 pretty solid wins this week. They went on the road to Butler on, last Tuesday, winning by 14 points. That was pretty impressive. I was saying last week, if St. John's were to lose that game to Butler, which at the time I thought there was a chance they could. I thought Butler had a chance in that one to win. St. John's ends up taking care of business. They also go on the road to Creighton, win by 17 points. Now, Creighton's not anything special, but 17-point road win, conference play. We'll give them that. That's a pretty decent win. St. John's moves to 11-5, but all the problems that I've stated throughout the season still apply. They're still too dependent on Zuby Ejiofor. They still don't have a true point guard. The roster's just not built great. I mean, all the same things we've been saying still apply. But they are a top 20 KenPom team. They're a top 20 offense in KenPom. They're a top 21 defense in KenPom. So the numbers still look good. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they can start picking up some wins in Big East play, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do. The Big East isn't too strong. And I still think St. John's is one of at least the 4th best team in the conference. Maybe you could argue they're higher than that, but as of right now, they are my 4th highest ranked team in the Big East, so I'll say that. But St. John's still has some talent. They still have Rick Pitino. I don't know. I've been panicked on them before. It's kind of the same thing with Kentucky. The expectations were so high coming into the season. And yes, they have disappointed, but I still think Kentucky and St. John's are both probably pretty safe tournament teams. I mean, maybe not safe, but I think they're both going to make the tournament. And could potentially, I mean, they're still really high in KenPom. They could potentially make some noise in the tournament if they do end up getting in, which, again, I do think they will. Number 33 is going to be Wisconsin. What a win for Wisconsin. What a week for Wisconsin. They pick up a win over UCLA. This was a UCLA team. This was Tuesday, by the way. UCLA, this was a team that I was still holding out hope for. A lot of people had given up on them. I wasn't ready to do so. I had them ranked at 30 last week. You'll notice that they're not in these rankings. They dropped all the way out. Wisconsin gets that win at home 80-72, and then on Saturday go on the road to Michigan. This was a Michigan team that I just maybe finally moved up to my number one team in my rankings last week for the first time. I had Arizona there for the longest time. I moved Michigan up last week, and Michigan just goes out, lays an egg. Wisconsin wins 91-88. Wisconsin was shooting the lights out. They couldn't miss from three. Huge win, road win against a team that was beating everybody by 30 for the past 10, 11, 12 games. Wisconsin went in there on the road, won that game. So, Wisconsin's started the season in the Power 40, and we're there for a few weeks. Haven't been in there for a while. But this Wisconsin team is now 11-5. They've picked up a lot of good wins as of recently. They won 4 of their last 5, and the only loss in there is to Purdue, who is a top 5 team. So Wisconsin's in a pretty good place, and I was giving them a little bit of, criticism because I was saying, well, John Blackwell, a lot of people thought this was going to be the next John Tonje. He was going to be the next Wisconsin guard that was going to lead them, but it wasn't looking great. But I will say, Nick Boyd and John Tonje both averaging over 18 points a game. They are a great guard duo, and Wisconsin has some life, folks. Wisconsin has some life in the Big Ten. They're 11-5, like I said, and they got a lot of very winnable games coming up. There's a chance I could see them winning all these games. I'd assume they probably don't, but for the rest of the month, they have 6 games left at Minnesota and home against Rutgers this week. I think both those games could be wins. Maybe Minnesota gives them some troubles. Minnesota has played some good teams in the Big Ten pretty tight. But then after that, at Penn State, home against USC is going to be tough. Home against Minnesota again, and home against Ohio State. So like I said, a lot of those games are pretty, winnable. Also, some of them could be tough. Like playing Minnesota twice that close is going to be hard. USC is a good team. Ohio State's a good team. But I feel like there's a chance they could win, if not all of those games, maybe 4 of those 6, 5 of those 6, and they'd be putting themselves in a pretty good position if they do. So Wisconsin right now is ranked 38th in KenPom, top 50 in offense and defense. So pretty well-rounded team here. They're coming in at 33. A whole lot of life for them with that Michigan win. Auburn's going to stay put where they're at. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, they did lose. Yes, Auburn lost to Texas A&M, but you got to look at this. Auburn now has lost 2 of their last 3, and I know Auburn is 10-6. They have 6 losses. Obviously, 6 losses at this point isn't great, but all of their losses are to good teams, to be fair. Their losses are to Houston, Michigan, Arizona, Purdue, Georgia, and Texas A&M. Those are all teams ranked in the Power 40, so they don't really have a bad loss. Now, granted, you could say, well, Texas A&M, they were at home in that game. They probably shouldn't have lost that game, and that is fair. Auburn probably should have won that game, but you also can look at it this way. They made a buzzer beater at the end of the game, 3-pointer to win that game. The final score was 90-88. Auburn lost by 2, but they made a buzzer beater 3 at the end. It was eventually called off. It was crazy. It was like .1. Was it in? Was it out? It was a really close call. I thought there was a chance that because it was so close, they may just keep what they had on the floor, which was the basket was good, but they overturn it. Not going to sit here and complain. I'm assuming the refs made the right call. So, you could argue Auburn, well, they were in that game. Auburn also, I know they lost 2 of their last 3, but they went on the road to Georgia. This was the past week, lost by 4 in overtime. And then on Saturday, this was the big one for me, winning against Arkansas by 22 points, putting up 95. If there was any doubt that this offense, wasn't good, I mean, you can't say that. The past 3 games they've had, the least amount of points they put up is 88. I guess the past 4 games, because they put up 106 against Queens, 100 against Georgia, 88 against Texas A&M, 95 against Arkansas. I've said this before, Auburn's one of the most fun teams to watch. If you haven't watched an Auburn game, go ahead and watch it. Keyshawn Hall puts up numbers every game. Todd Pettiford is one of the most enjoyable players to watch in the country, and I'll stand by that. He is so fun to watch. He's a highlight reel. Same thing with Keyshawn Hall. Like I said, he puts up a whole lot of points. So I like this Auburn team in terms of watchability. Like I'm telling you, this is a top 10 offense in KenPom. In terms of what's their ceiling, I'm not sure. This Auburn team can beat a lot of teams just because of the way they played the offense. They're not necessarily a super fast team, but they're a really efficient offense. They score a lot of points. Their defense isn't great, but they've played a pretty tough schedule. So being 10-6 at this point, it's not really the end of the world. I think Auburn's going to be just fine. So I'm having them staying put where they're at. like I said, in terms of watchability, there may be like they're probably up there with like top 5, top 3 for me in terms of actual, ceiling in March. Like I said, they're kind of like a worse version of Arkansas for me. Like they can beat a lot of teams. I don't think they can beat every team. Like Arkansas, I think can beat almost everybody. But Auburn, you can't really say that, but they can beat a lot of good teams. They could also lose to some worse teams. Like they're a lower ceiling, lower floor Arkansas for me, which is weird because they did just beat Arkansas by 20 plus points. So it's weird that I'm saying that, but you get the idea. I think most would agree Arkansas is better than Auburn. That's weird. That's weird to say because literally 2 days ago, Auburn won by 22 points over Arkansas. But you get what I'm saying. Number 31 is going to be St. Mary's, moving up 2 spots. They continue to win. St. Mary's is just always in this range. I feel like they always are going to be. Like St. Mary's is a team that never really has a true ceiling in March. Like their ceiling is usually the Sweet 16 if they can even get there. I mean, this is a St. Mary's team that probably won't get upset in the first round just because, they just play so, defensive, so slow. I will say their defense is outside of the top 50, which usually their defense is, way up there. So that's definitely interesting, something to keep an eye on. They're also usually much better in terms of KenPom, but they're only at 35th overall. Usually they're inside the top 25. So that's interesting, like I said. We'll see if they can get it up. But as of right now, St. Mary's continues to win. They're going to move up 2. St. Louis up 8 spots. This is a fun team, folks. This is, if you get rid of Gonzaga, the West Coast Conference, this is probably the best mid-major, or at least like true mid-major team in the country. St. Louis is 15-1, and I've said this before. I'll say it again. St. Louis is so close to being undefeated right now. They lost a game in November to Stanford on a buzzer beater, losing by 1 point. St. Louis is legit. They've won. They're 15. They're 15-1. They've won 13 of their 15 games by double-digit points. St. Louis picked up a huge win on the road against VCU. That was a game I was tuned into. I was watching for that result because I thought it was going to be a great game. And St. Louis took care of business on the road, winning by 9 points. St. Louis, you could look at the record. Okay, they don't play in the best conference. This is the number 34 ranked team in KenPom. They are 1 spot behind North Carolina. They're ahead of teams like Wisconsin, who just beat Michigan on the road, St. Mary's, Miami, Ohio State, Texas A&M. A lot of teams I have ranked St. Louis is ahead of, and they're, like I said, they're close behind some very good teams. They're right behind UNC, SMU, Auburn, Arkansas. St. Louis is legit, folks. They got almost a top 30 defense as well. I'm telling you, watch out for St. Louis. They're going to be a scary team, whoever gets them in the first round of the tournament. Villanova's going to drop down 7 spots to number 29. They had a kind of an iffy week. They lose at home against Creighton by 4 points and then go on the road to Marquette, only winning by 3. That raised some concerns for me, but Villanova's still top 25 KenPom team, still top 25 offense, top 40 defense. I'm not too concerned. They're 13-3 at this point, but I don't know. You would have liked to win against Creighton. I think Villanova's a better team than Creighton. I'm assuming Villanova was favored going into that. So, yeah, obviously you would have loved to win that one, but I still think Villanova's a pretty solid team. I still believe this team is a tournament team, but that was a tough loss, so they're going to have to drop down. SMU actually lost twice. You may be wondering, well, how does Villanova was ahead of SMU last week. SMU lost twice. Villanova only lost once, and now Villanova's behind them. I get that. I understand that. But SMU lost by 4 points on the road to Clemson, and then lost by 7 points on the road against Duke. Those are two teams that are ranked ahead of them. They were both close games, and they were both on the road. Villanova lost to Creighton at home, and that is a team that's nowhere close to the Power 40 in all honesty. So I think SMU is, at this point, I think SMU is better than Villanova. They're 12-4, so I guess the record's worse. KenPom-wise, they are slightly below. But SMU's got a top 15 offense. I love SMU's guard play. I think they have a very high ceiling going into the tournament. Boopy Miller is their guy, and he is really fun to watch. I think SMU's a great team. 2 ranked losses on the road by less than double digits, like 7 points and 4 points. That's really, I'm not that concerned. Like, those two losses don't really do much for me to get off of SMU. So, yes, I drop them a little, but really not that much, which if any other team lost by 2 points, you usually drop down more than 3, but those two losses were to two great teams on the road, like, and it was close. Like, I can't really drop them too much, in all honesty there. Iowa, I will drop. Iowa also lost 2 games this past week, moving down 9 spots. I've had my concerns about Iowa, I will say. They lose on the road to Minnesota by 3 points and then lose at home to Illinois by 6 points. I will say Illinois kind of dominated that game, but Iowa did come back late. Like I said, I've had these doubts about Iowa for a while. Like, this is a team that's just really reliant on Bennett Sturts. Their KenPom numbers were always great. They always had a great defense, but the slow pace, the over-reliancy on Bennett Sturts offensively, like, they just don't have much offensive output besides him. Slow pace come tournament time. You could say what you want. In my opinion, I'd rather be a fast-paced team in the tournament than a slow-paced team. Teams will disagree. Like, Houston has had a lot of success as a slow-paced team. There's a whole lot of teams that play at a slow pace. Purdue plays at a really slow pace. Michigan State, obviously, like Tennessee. Like, these are some teams that have had success. But in my opinion, I think I'd lean towards rather having a high-paced team than a slow pace. So Iowa slow pace, really, relying on Ben Sturts offensively. They don't really have a guy to go to besides him. So I've had my concerns. I worry about the ceiling for them, and it's still kind of the same thing, and I do drop them quite a bit. They lost 2 games, one of them to Minnesota, which not a great loss. Number 26 is going to be Utah State, folks. Don't look now, but I think this, I've heard some noise. I think I would agree with what people are saying, that this might be the best Utah State team they've had in program history. They're 14-1 right now, and they are dominating in the Mountain West. I've been saying this before they've had some of these results, but Utah State is by far, clearly the best team in the Mountain West. It's not even close. They just beat Boise State. I thought this was going to be a good game. I thought this was going to be a good test for Utah State. Going to Boise State on the road, I thought that was going to be kind of tough for them. Utah State won 93-68. I also said this last month. I said Utah State, Colorado State, watch out for that game. Colorado State's been shooting pretty well. They could win. Utah State won that game by 42 points. So it looks now that Utah State's just going to run away with the Mountain West. Now, I will say San Diego State is 5-0 in the Mountain West as well, so don't forget about them. They're always a tough team. But Utah State also is a top 20 KenPom team, 15th in offense, 40th in defense. The Mountain West typically doesn't do well in the tournament, but I think Utah State has a real chance to kind of break that. I really like this team. They're moving up 10 spots all the way up here to 26, just outside my top 25. Let's go ahead and jump into the top 25, though. Number 25, Seton Hall, moving up 3 spots. They've been kind of in this range of 21 to 30 for quite some time. They're 25th in the AP poll. They got a huge home game, 2 huge home games actually this week. If they can split, amazing. UConn, obviously, tomorrow is the big one. We'll see if Seton Hall can do it. Their defense is very capable of keeping them in this game. I'd expect Utah to win, but Seton Hall has a top 10 defense, folks. Now, offensively, they're ranked 133rd, but I think defensively they can keep UConn. They can keep themselves in this game, especially with it being at home. This is like the biggest Seton Hall home game they've had in a long time. They also play Butler at home Saturday. Butler's a pretty decent team. Seton Hall's got a pretty tough stretch here. We'll see what happens to them. I think they do have a chance to beat UConn. I don't think they will, but UConn only favored by 5.5. That's honestly less than I would have expected for a top 3 team. So Seton Hall, very capable, very good team. They're coming in at 25. Number 24 is going to be Tennessee. I'm starting to not love this Tennessee team. I don't know if anyone else is feeling this, but I've been feeling it in the back of my head. I haven't fallen in love with this Tennessee team as much as I would like to. In the back of my head, it's just been creeping forward and forward as the weeks go by, and I'm finally going to say it. I don't know if this Tennessee team is all that great. Like, is that fair to say? I know Tennessee beat Louisville a few weeks ago by 20 points. I know Tennessee beat Houston in the Players era, but they also lost to Kansas. They also lost to Syracuse. They lost to Illinois, Arkansas, Florida. Like, none of these teams that they're losing to are bad, really. Like, Syracuse even is pretty solid, but just watching them play, something's just not right to me. Like, Rick Barnes always kind of, he's never been able to break through in the tournament. He's had some pretty good teams. Like, he's had Elite Eight teams, but he usually is a pretty high seed, and he just can't seem to get to, like, the Final Four national championship game. And I don't think, like, this team just doesn't really do it for me. They're obviously going to have a great defense, but that's always the case with Rick Barnes. And offensively, I feel like they usually have some more guys to go to, some more experience. It's really just Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ahmet sometimes. Like, Nate Ahmet's just too inconsistent for me to, get on right now. He's shooting 28% from 3 right now. I know he's a freshman. Like, I'm assuming he'll get better, but at this point, we're, like, almost halfway through January. And it's still, it's the same kind of talking point. So I don't know. I think Tennessee's capable of beating some good teams. If Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ahmet are on, with that defense, with those two going, like, they can beat a lot of teams, but the ceiling-wise, I don't think they have a very high ceiling come March. I don't know. But they are down 4. They did get blown out on the road against Florida. And if there was any team to shut down Florida's guards, who have been really just not good this whole season, I thought it would be Tennessee, and they weren't even able to do that. Florida's guards were like frying Tennessee, so this was kind of like I had enough. I had to get my opinion out on Tennessee. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you guys are feeling the same way about Tennessee. Kansas, they're moving down 4. You could argue Kansas maybe had a worse week. I know Tennessee lost by like 30 points or whatever it was. Maybe I think it was like 20 something, 20 to 30 points, whatever it was. I want to say it was like 91 to 67 or something like that. So yeah, 24 points, whatever. You could say Kansas had a worse week. Like, Kansas lost to West Virginia by 11 points. Probably should have lost to TCU as well. Like, there was a chance Kansas started out Big 12 play 0-3, which is insane. Now they're 1-2 right now, which isn't good either. And they got a game tomorrow at home against Iowa State. But the thing is, Darren Peterson is kind of back. Like, he's on a minutes restriction. He didn't play in overtime against TCU this week. They did end up finding a way to win that game. I don't know how they won that game. TCU really just blew that one. Like, TCU had that game, and Kansas was at home too. It was crazy. I was getting ready to come on here. Kansas won, though. I think if now this is a big if, because I've been saying this for a while, but if Darren Peterson can somehow get fully healthy, get off the minutes restriction, just get fully healthy where he's playing games, he is that good that Kansas can be like a deep tournament team. I really do think that. I think Darren Peterson is that good. There's a reason, even with his injuries, even with him missing all these games, he's still like pretty consensusly like the number 1 NBA pick on most mock drafts right now, from what I'm hearing. So that just goes to show how good he is. We'll see how they look tomorrow, home against Iowa State. I think this is going to be a big test for them. They could potentially win that game, and maybe I have to shut up. I'm a little less worried about Kansas than I am Tennessee. Kansas also beat Tennessee, so that's why they're ahead here. They were also ahead last week. Georgia's going to move up 1. I didn't like moving them up 1 because they did lose to Florida by 15. They got a decent win at South Carolina, I guess, but in reality, just a lot of these teams in this range lost last week. It was hard for me to not move them up, and I feel like they, at this point, deserve to be ahead of teams like Kansas and Tennessee. So yeah, that's the thinking on Georgia. Clemson's going to move up 13 spots. You could argue Clemson maybe should be a little bit lower, but Clemson is 14-3. They also have a win over Georgia, so I'm trying to honor that. In overtime, that was a really close game, so obviously these two teams are pretty similarly matched. Now, I've been saying about Clemson, they have some really close losses to some pretty good teams, besides the Georgetown loss, but that was, in the first 2 weeks of the season. Besides that loss, Clemson has a 6-point loss on the road against Alabama and a 3-point loss to BYU, and that was a game they were up like 20-plus points. Clemson now, I've been saying, well, they don't really have the wins. Like, yes, you can say they played good teams close, but they lost those games. They don't have the wins. This past week, they won against SMU. That was a team I had inside my top 25 last week. And then they went on the road to Notre Dame. Pretty solid ACC team, winning by 15 points. They got a big test home against Saturday against Miami. That's a team that they're a top 40 team for me, 14-2. That's a pretty good team, but I would expect Clemson to win. I think they're a really good team. They got a lot of guys who touch the ball. Really, a decent offense. Really, it's the defense though that is the carrier for them. They're ranked 18th in defensive efficiency, 29th overall in KenPom. I really like this Clemson team. I don't know how Clemson does it every year, but they just find guys, and they just find a way to be solid. So they're coming in at 21. Louisville is going to move up. Again, kind of the same thing with the Georgia thing. I didn't want to move them up, but I kind of just had to. They lost, though, by 11 points against Duke. To be fair, though, Louisville has been beat up all for the past, a long time. Michael Brown Jr. hasn't played in almost a month now, which really does suck. He's their freshman. He's their star. He's their best player. They were in that game with Duke for a while, even without him, though. I know Ryan Conwell has been a little beat up as well, so that's obviously something to look out for. Yeah, I mean, with Louisville, honestly, the fact they played Duke that well without their best player, if Michael Brown Jr. plays in that game, I think Louisville probably wins. And Duke was struggling for a while. They had to pull away late. I think Louisville's going to be just fine. They got a game tomorrow home against Virginia. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Louisville wins that, even without Michael Brown Jr., but obviously you want to get him back as soon as possible. Virginia's going to come in at 19. Funny, these two teams are going to play tomorrow, so that's obviously a huge game. But Virginia continues to win 14-2. This was a team I was high on coming into the season, and obviously they have made me look very smart. Ryan Odom has got those boys playing. This is the number 18th ranked offense, the number 23 ranked defense. The defense was kind of lagging behind for a little bit, but now top 25 defense, top 20 offense. This team is ranked 15th in KenPom overall. One spot ahead of Louisville, actually, which is interesting. So two very evenly matched teams. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I can't wait for that game. Virginia also has a game Saturday at SMU. Pretty big week for them. They've had a tough start to ACC play, but they keep winning, and they're winning by 15 points every time, pretty consistently. So Virginia is really impressing me right now. They're going to move up 5. Alabama had a pretty rough week, going 0-2. They're going to move down 5, 18th overall for me. They went on the road to Vanderbilt, losing by 6 points. I wasn't really worried, with that one. Vanderbilt is a really good team, and LeBaron Philon didn't play in the entire second half. If he plays, they probably win that game. The refs also weren't giving Alabama much help either at the end there. Vanderbilt wins by 6 points on the road. So honestly, Alabama, that one, I wasn't really worried. I wasn't going to drop them too much after that. But the real one was they lose by 4 points to Texas at home. It's not like it was at Texas. That was the one where I was really confused. And LeBaron Philon played that whole game, so that was really concerning. That was, question marks for me. This was an Alabama team that I said if I had to pick a team to win the SEC that I'd be most confident in, it would be Alabama. But now, going 0-2 this past week, 11-5, I think this team is 1-2 in SEC play, which is not a great start. Hopefully they can turn it around. I'd expect them to. This is kind of what we see from Alabama all the time. Just not a very consistent defense. 77th ranked defense in KenPom. That's just what it is, and that's what they've have been for a while. Still the number 2 offense, though. The offense is going to give them a very high ceiling. We've seen Nate Oates and Alabama make the Final Four before. I wouldn't be shocked. Alabama can still make the Final Four this year. This is a team with a very high ceiling. I've said it before. I can't wait to watch LeBaron Philon in March. That's how good he is. So I still think they have a very high ceiling, but this is a team that now we've seen can lose to Texas. That's not a good loss at all, especially at home. So Alabama really fluctuating here. They can lose to a lot of teams. They can also beat a lot of teams. So they're coming in at 18 for me. 17 is going to be Florida, up 12 spots. A huge rise for Florida. And now all of a sudden, Florida is almost fully back. I'm not going to say that yet. They did lose to Missouri last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago. But last week, they had 2 home games against 2 top 25 teams for me, as well as the AP Poll. They beat Georgia by 15 and Tennessee by 24 points, both at home. This was a huge week for Florida, and you now look at Florida, and you're thinking, I've been saying this about Florida. Everyone's been all panicked because the guard play hasn't been great. I've been saying give them time. I think they will get better. Now I have said Xavier Lee. I was getting close to giving up. I will be honest, but I've been saying I think Florida's going to get better as the season goes on. They're going to lean on Thomas Houck. The guards are going to come around. Boogie Flan played his probably best game of the season against Tennessee, which is interesting because I mentioned this earlier. Tennessee was, if there was any game for him to do it, it would not have been Tennessee. This is a team that defends guards very well, defends in general very well. But Boogie Fland shot 9 for 13, 23 points. Xavier Lee has also had some pretty, some pretty solid games recently. So that's a good sign. Both these guys are starting to figure it out, starting to get going. If they can get these guys to play consistently, then I think Florida can win the SEC. I don't think that's crazy to say. I think Vanderbilt's got to be the favorite right now, but Florida might be the team I'd pick second right now. In all honesty, I know I have Arkansas ahead of them. Alabama, I said last week, would be the team I'd pick to win the SEC. Maybe it is still Alabama. Maybe it's just Vanderbilt. Maybe Arkansas can do it. Very high ceiling, but I think Florida's right there. We're going to see, though, Saturday they go on the road to play Vanderbilt. I can't wait for that game. Huge game. If Florida can go 2-0 again this week, because tomorrow they play at Oklahoma, it's not going to be an easy win. Maybe could be a little bit of a trap game there. They can go on the road to beat Oklahoma and then go on the road Saturday to beat Vanderbilt. Florida might be close to like a top 10 team next week. Florida, if they can go 2-0 this week, I'm ready to say they're all the way back. And, I'm not going to say they can win it all just yet. I'm going to reserve that. But if they go into Vandy and win that game, all of a sudden, I think there might be a chance. Now, maybe they still can't win it all just because. But, if they go on the road to Vandy, with the way Vandy's playing and the guards play good in that game, I think Florida can win it all. Now, not right now. I want to be very clear. But if Florida goes on the road and beats Vandy, the guards play well, I think I would be ready to say Florida can repeat. Now, I probably won't end up picking them because this team is nowhere near as good as they were last year, and it's very hard to repeat. You kind of have to be better in the second year if you do want to repeat, and I don't think Florida meets that, so I probably won't end up picking them, but could they? If they win against Vandy on the road, sure, we'll say that. But as of right now, Florida's almost nearly very close to being fully back for me. They're moving up 12 spots. 16 is going to be Texas Tech. They're staying put where they're at. It's the same talking points with them. Christian Anderson, JT Toppin are amazing. They're capable of winning them almost any game. But it does really limit their ceiling that it is kind of just only those two guys. Defensively, they haven't been as good this season as they have been in the past, so that obviously hurts them. If they had an elite defense as well as those two guys offensively, then maybe Texas Tech's ceiling would be much higher, but they're 22nd in KenPom, top 35 defense. They've been better at certain points in other seasons, and then 16th in offense. Yes, Christian Anderson, JT Toppin are both probably going to be All-American players. That's how good both those guys are, but they were very close to beating Houston on the road. I'll give them that. They were right there in that game. It was back and forth for really the whole game. But, unfortunately, Christian Anderson only put up 7 points. You're going to have those games with Texas Tech. JT Toppin and Christian Anderson have to both score 20-plus points if Texas Tech wants to beat a good team, and they're probably going to have to get something from one of their other guys, Lawan Watts, Atwell, Petty, whoever it is going to be, but yeah, Christian Anderson played 40 minutes and only had 7 points. You can't have that, especially when he's the guy who's been their consistent guy along with JT Toppin. You got to have more from him in that spot. I'm not, obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming Christian Anderson. He's been so good for them all season, but you got to have, if you want to beat Houston on the road, you're going to need more than 7 points from him, especially because that's how important he is. Number 15 is going to be Arkansas. Same thing kind of with Alabama. This is a team, very young team with a very high ceiling, very fun team. They can beat a lot of teams. They can also lose to a lot of teams. We saw them lose by 22 points against Auburn. They just didn't look motivated in that one. I don't know what that was really about. They got a big game coming up Saturday at Georgia. But again, not too worried about Arkansas. We've known this. We've kind of figured out who they are. They could be a team that makes a deep run. They could also be a team that gets out in the first or second round. I wouldn't be shocked at that at all. Number 14 is going to be UNC. I'm still kind of confused fully what UNC is, but they are 14-2. I don't know. I want to see them start playing some of these elite ACC teams because they played SMU and lost. I need to see them play the Virginias, the Clemsons, the Dukes, Louisville. We're gonna get to that, but I'd like to see it. I would like to see it because their KenPom numbers don't really look great. Not very appealing. I know Caleb Wilson, Henry Visar, all these guys that they do have are pretty good players. Seth Trimble, but I want to see them play some pretty good teams here. We will get it soon, don't worry. Illinois is an interesting team. Like, they went on the road against Iowa, pretty good win there. They're 13-3. I think Illinois is a really good team. They've kind of been flying under the radar. Nobody's really talking about them. Illinois is ranked 7th in KenPom, guys. Top 3 offense, 16th in defense. This is a team that can make like a run, like a deep run. They're a very deep team. They shoot very well. Like I said, top 3 offense, that can get you very far in the tournament. And they've played a hard schedule too. So Illinois, I'm still really liking. They're kind of sneakily under the radar team there. Michigan State going to stay put where they're at. 14-2, took care of business this past week. Blew out USC. That was a pretty impressive win. Same like Michigan State. We know who they are. Pretty similar to last year's team. They don't really have fully the guy. Jeremy Fears is very good, one of the best point guards in the country, but he's not like a scorer. He's more of a facilitator. But he can score. I mean, he can score. He can get his points. But Michigan State defense, the first team, obviously top 3 defense, and that's won them some pretty big games. Number 11. This may come as a shock to some of you. I have BYU. I have BYU down 2 spots. I know the AP poll does too. I will say, I've been saying the top 9 teams are going to be one of those 9's going to win it all. I'm ready to say I think I have to move it to 11. I really do. I think any of these top 11 teams can win it all at this point. BYU still going to be in that group because AJ DeBanza, Richie Saunders, Rob Wright, all 3 of those guys alone can win you a title. That's how good those 3 guys are offensively. DeBanza's averaging 23, Richie Saunders averaging 19, Rob Wright averaging 17. Besides those 3, nobody else is really doing anything, but they haven't really needed them to. They're a top 8 offense. They're 8th in offense, 17th in defense, top 10 in offense, top 20 in defense, 11th in KenPom. That's a pretty good recipe for success. BYU has a incredibly high ceiling. They had a tough game on the road against Utah, only winning by 5 points. Utah's not great, but that's a big rivalry game on the road. I'm not going to really worry about that game too much. They got the win. That's really all that matters in that one. Rivalry games are always tough. But moving into the top 10, number 10, I'm going to have Gonzaga actually moving down 2 spots as well. Maybe you could argue Gonzaga should be below BYU, but I think Gonzaga's resume is better. They're also higher in KenPom. Gonzaga's ranked 6th in KenPom, 6th in offense, 12th in defense. This Gonzaga team's still really good, 17-1. I've had Gonzaga ranked ahead of BYU for a long time, so I didn't really feel the need to move them. But I will say Gonzaga's kind of been a little iffy to start West Coast Conference play. They got taken to overtime by Seattle. They were pretty close for a half with Santa Clara. They played a close game with San Diego. Like, Gonzaga's looked a little bit iffy. They do play St. Mary's at the end of the month, so we'll see what happens there. But Gonzaga's going to have some opportunities to get right. They don't play like obviously the West Coast Conference. It's not going to have a crazy tough schedule, but Gonzaga at this point, I do have to drop Gonzaga and BYU both down 2 spots because I feel like there's 2 teams that have been behind them for a long time that they just have to be ahead of them at this point. And Vanderbilt is going to come in at number 9 for me. Honestly, this may be too low. Vanderbilt maybe should be even higher than this. If you wanted to argue that, I wouldn't blame you, honestly. I'm going to have them at 9, though. I think, if they keep winning, they're going to keep moving up, obviously. Like, the way they've been beating some of these teams, it is so impressive. This is a top 5 KenPom team. They got the 5th ranked offense, 11th ranked defense. They brought a lot of guys back from last season, and I love that. I love continuity. Tyler Tanner, 17 points a game. Duke Miles, 17 points a game. Tyler Nickel, 15 points a game. They got a 3-headed monster right there. This team is averaging 93 points a game right now. Absolutely absurd what Vanderbilt is doing. They beat Bama this past week. That was like their first really true test, and they took care of business, won that game. Like I mentioned, they got a big home game again on Saturday against Florida. They're going to continue to play some great teams in the SEC, obviously. At this point, Vanderbilt's the best team in the SEC, folks. Like, legitimately, Vanderbilt, by that logic, has to be a national championship contender, and I think they are. I think they're that good. If Vanderbilt beats Florida, I think I'll probably have to move them ahead of the team I have 1 spot ahead of them right now, which is Nebraska. I'm going to keep Nebraska ahead of them. Nebraska, at this point, I think has more good wins than Vanderbilt. Maybe Vanderbilt has the quality, but Nebraska beat Wisconsin by 30. at the time, Wisconsin was decent, but Wisconsin just went into Michigan and beat Michigan. The fact that Nebraska beat them by 30, that's got to mean something. They also have a win over Illinois on the road by 3 points, a win over Michigan State pretty recently, and this past week, they had two really tough road games against two really good Big Ten teams, Ohio State and Indiana. I know neither of them are in my Power 40, but Indiana was last week. Ohio State, I think, has been in there at some point. Both those teams have been either in or just outside my Power 40 for a long time, and Nebraska won both those games. I want to say Indiana was the favorite. Nebraska was losing for a while in that game. They came back winning by 6 points there and then beating Ohio State by 3. Nebraska continues to win. But like I said, if Vanderbilt beats Florida on Saturday, I think I have to move Vanderbilt even higher than they are right now. Vanderbilt's higher in KenPom already. But I kind of did the same thing with Arizona, Michigan. Like, I had Arizona ahead of them just because they had more good wins, but Michigan's quality eventually overtook them. Now, obviously, Michigan lost, so Arizona, you could assume would be back to number one. We'll see what I have, but yeah, like, it's kind of the same situation. I'm going to keep Nebraska ahead for now, but if you wanted to argue Vanderbilt should be higher ahead of them, if you want to argue Vanderbilt and Nebraska should both be even higher, because they're both 16-0 at this point, so that's pretty impressive stuff. You can't deny. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it's okay to put these teams ahead of Gonzaga and BYU, even though both those teams have been top 9 teams, top 8 teams for like the whole season. So I gotta put these two teams ahead at this point. They're undefeated. Houston's gonna come in for me at number 7. They continue to win. They beat Texas Tech. That was a team that was hanging with them for a long time. Then they went Saturday on the road against Baylor. Baylor's a pretty solid team. They got some talent. Winning by 22 points, it was never a question. Kingston Flemings is one of the best freshmen in the country, and I feel like he's not getting talked about enough. This guy is probably like one of the top 5 freshmen in the country. In a loaded freshman class, he has been absurd for them, not to mention they still have Emmanuel Sharp, Joseph Tugler, Miles Uzan. Houston is like really quietly still, like, I don't want to say this now. Obviously, it's going to depend on the matchup, but Houston might, Houston was my preseason national champion pick. Houston might still be that come March. Like, they're very quietly doing very well for themselves, so I love what I'm seeing from Houston. Duke is going to stay put where they're at. They got 2 big wins, one on the road, one at home. At Louisville, they win by 11 points. They pulled away late, and then SMU, they won by 7 points. They were in control of that game for pretty much the whole thing. Duke is 15-1. They have probably the best player in the country in Cameron Boozer. Great coach in John Shire. Really good resume. So Duke's got to be 6 for me. Their top 10 KenPom team, 11th in offense, 10th in defense. Very well rounded. Duke's, a national championship contender pretty clearly to me. Purdue's going to come in at 5. I said this last week. I want to say it again. Braden Smith at this point is very much on pace to break the all-time D1 assists record. So good for him. TKR's doing very well as well. Actually, TKR's kind of been disappointing, I'll be honest. Only 13 points a game. Now, 10 rebounds is still very good. But yeah, I will say Oscar Clough has been really good for them out of the portal. He's been amazing. I still think Purdue is one of the best teams in the country. They got the number 1 offense in KenPom, top 20 defense. This is always kind of my rule. If I want to pick a team to go deep in March, they got to have top 20 offense and defense. Purdue does have that. They're number 4 overall, number 1 offense, with one of the best players in the country in Braden Smith. Very deep team as well, very well coached. Good resume, only 1 loss. They're coming in at number 5 for me. Number 4 is where I'm going to put Michigan. They had a rough week this week. They almost went 0-2 this week, Michigan, that is. They went on the road to Penn State, won by 2 points. Penn State had a game winner, a buzzer beater. It didn't go in, so Michigan was 1 shot away from losing to Penn State, and they did actually lose to Wisconsin at home, by the way. It's not like they were at Wisconsin. Wisconsin wins that game at home. So Michigan now is kind of starting to show what they showed at the start of the year, which is making me think Michigan may be a little more volatile than we think. They had those close games at the start of the year. For those who don't remember, Michigan played against TCU and Wake Forest early in November, and they were very close with both those teams. They beat Wake Forest by 1 point in overtime, and they beat TCU by 4 points. But then, in the Players era, and really all throughout December, they were beating everyone by like 30 points, 40 points, 50 points even at sometimes. and like literally everyone. It's not like they played bad teams. They played Villanova, USC, Gonzaga, Auburn, San Diego State. Like they were blowing out these teams. But now they're kind of back to where they start. Like it's weird. So I'm not gonna worry too much about Michigan. They're still the #1 KenPom team. They're still the #1 defense, top 10 offense as well. They still have a great roster. I will say Elliot Cadeau absolutely took over in that second half against Wisconsin. That was so fun to watch. He had 0 points in the first half. I actually am not sure what he finished with, but like halfway through the second half, he had like 20 points after having no points in the first half. He finished with 19, so almost 20 points. Like he was absolutely ridiculous in the second half for them. I think Michigan's going to be just fine. I wouldn't worry too much. They're not looking like the all great total domination team that they were looking like though. This past week it raised some concerns, but I wouldn't panic on them. Obviously #4 team in the country still. #3 is going to be UConn. I'm going to continue staying it, but I think if I had to pick a team right now, it's probably UConn to win it all. I just trust them the most. They've been kind of the highest ranked one-loss team for a long time. When there was 4 unbeatens, when there was 3 unbeatens, when there's now 2 unbeatens, UConn's been the highest ranked one-loss team, and I'm going to continue to stand by it. I think UConn may still be the best team in the country. Like if you put everyone on a neutral court and played, I think UConn might be the best team. Just my opinion. They got a top 5 defense, top 25 offense, #9 overall. #2 is going to be Iowa State. They actually received one #1 vote in the AP polls, so shout out to whoever that was. Iowa State's a very legit team. Joshua Jefferson's playing like the best player in the country right now. Momcilovic still shooting the lights out, 55% from 3. Tamin Lipsey, Killian Torrey, Blake Buchanan, like so many good players on this team. They got a big test though tomorrow at Kansas. We'll see if they can win that one. But Iowa State 16-0. They've been a top 3 team ever since they went on the road to Purdue and blew them out by 23 points. Insane. And Iowa State ranks 12th in offense, 2nd in defense, 3rd overall in KenPom. But #1, no question for me, it's got to be Arizona. Arizona's been my #1 for so long. Last week I actually dropped them to #2. I had Michigan finally up to #1, but now with Michigan losing, Arizona is now back to #1, and it's got to be Arizona pretty clearly. I feel like we haven't really talked about Arizona much recently, but in all honesty, they haven't really played anyone. Really. Just being honest, the past few weeks they really haven't played anyone. They had such a hard start, such a hard November schedule, beating Florida, UCLA, UConn, Auburn, Alabama. They played so many good teams. San Diego State even, and they blew out a lot of the. They dominated a lot of those games. But recently, they haven't really played anyone. You look at their schedule: Bethune-Cookman, South Dakota State, Utah, Kansas State, TCU, and they really don't play anyone until they got to go on the road late January to play BYU. There's a chance Arizona and BYU both go into that game. Arizona might be 20-0. I think they probably will be 20-0 going into that game. BYU's probably going to be 19-1 going into that game. So that's going to be a huge game when that happens. I can't wait for it. But yeah, Arizona's got to be #1. 4th in offense, 4th in defense, top 5 in both offense and defense. Just barely behind Michigan for #1 in KenPom, and they're undefeated. So they got to be #1. But that is going to do it for the Week 11 college basketball Power 40 rankings. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you go down there, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. Comment down below what you disagree, what you agree. Just your overall thoughts about my rankings, maybe some of your rankings. Maybe your national champion pick, early national champion pick right now. Whatever you want to comment down there, just go down there, leave it. We'll be sure to reply. I'll do my best to reply, obviously. But yeah, that is going to do it. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new around here, make sure you subscribe, though. Turn on the notice to make sure you don't miss whenever we post. We're posting college basketball on Mondays, college football on Tuesdays, NFL on Wednesdays, NBA on Thursdays. So if any of that interests you, subscribe. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another college football, I think our national championship preview and prediction video. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We will see you guys tomorrow.